Welcome back to Bead Fest 2023, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. Those of you watching on JTV Extra, thank you for spending a little time with us. My name is Robert. I'm going to be with you for the next, say, 30 to 45 minutes. We have a very special treat for you today. We have brought 4 designers from different areas that Bead Fest focuses on, and we're going to ask them some questions today. So moving left to right, for those of you watching at home and in the audience, I'm going to introduce, and then lucky Sandy, because she's got the mic, she gets to go first. Oh, wow. So we have to my left Sandy Rusner, and then you might recognize the young lady there in the, is that peach or coral? Let's go coral dress. That's my sister Susan Thomas, and then to her left is Meredith Roddy, and then all the way on the end, Rita Panula, and we went over pronunciations before the show. So I'm going to pick a question from my list, and then I'm going to ask each of you to answer it, or a couple to answer, and then whoever has the mic at that time will start again. Is that fair? And if you have any questions at home, we've got a little computer over here, and Maddie's on it. Maybe there's other questions that you have, okay? So let me look at my list, and one of the first things that I asked Susan quite a while ago was, how did you start designing? So Sandy, if you would, tell us what your focus is and then how you got into it.
So I am the technical content editor for Yarn at Interweave. So I do all the technical editing for Interweave Knits magazines and write technical information for the website. And I got started designing because I owned a yarn store that I opened in California back in 2000, long time ago.
Yeah, 23 years.
And I would be making things that I wanted to make with the yarn in the store, and customers would want a pattern for it. And so I had to figure out how to write instructions so that the customers would buy the yarn to make the thing I was making. From that, some yarn company representatives came to me and said, gee, we like what you're doing. Would you like to design something for one of our pattern collections? And it sort of snowballed from there. And I've now been designing and teaching and technical editing for almost 25 years.
Let me ask you this. When you were in high school, did you ever picture?
Oh, God, no. Nobody grows up and says, I want to be a knitting technical editor when I grow up. No.
That is awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Sandy.
Thank
and if
you.
you'll pass the baton to the one and only Susan Thomas, ladies and gentlemen, here's your question.
Yeah.
You've owned a store, then you went into showbiz, so to speak, but what was it? And I'm going to act as if I don't know. What was it? Okay, what were you doing, and then all of a sudden you got into jewelry, making jewelry?
Are we going back before I started the store?
Yes.
Oh, well, I was working as an expert witness. Yes. I know, it's so weird, isn't it? It's not, yeah. I was working as an expert witness, and I went into this boutique, and it was a clothing boutique, and amazingly, this woman taught me how to make jewelry. And I had one of those 180-degree turnaround moments. And I was so inspired and so excited about it that I completely changed my life, and I opened a bead store within about 6 months of that moment.
Wow.
Yeah, I did. And then I had a very similar experience to Sandy, which was that I started making jewelry for people, and then all they wanted to do was find out how to make it. So I started teaching how to make jewelry because I needed to sell the beads that I was purchasing many of. And so that's kind of how that happened. And then from there, I don't know, somebody caught wind of me from JTV, and Joyce Richmond actually contacted me and asked me to come do videos and stuff like that. And I eventually became an artist. And then somebody thought that, gosh, once you get that girl started talking, she never stops. And so they thought, well, they'll put me on TV.
I can attest to that, by the way.
Sorry.
So, again, when you were in high school, did you ever dream of being a jewelry maker?
No, I was going to be a concert pianist when I was in high school.
Okay.
Followed very closely by a singer-songwriter in Nashville.
So it is kind of a little different path.
A little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Meredith, you're on the air. How did you get into this gig? And most importantly, what is your specialty?
Okay, so let me first introduce myself for anybody who might not know who I am. I'm Meredith Roddy, and I work at Bead and Artistic Wire. I do sales and marketing for them and a lot of designing. But the question is, how did I get into this? I've always been a maker. I don't remember a time in my childhood and growing up when I wasn't creative, when I wasn't creating, when I wasn't making something, whether it be raiding my dad's tackle box for different components for his lures, or grabbing his fishing wire to make strung bracelets, to make daisy chains. I've always been creative, and I've always wanted to make things, and most often jewelry. So my path is a little different, of course, as everybody's is, but I had been doing corporate fundraising, and a bead store opened up near my house. And I was, as they were doing all of their work to open the store, I did one of these as I was driving up the road, and I literally screeched over. I went and I pounded down the door, and I said, please let me do anything. Let me work here. Let me sell beads. And so I still had my day job, and I taught her classes. I helped out in the store, and I loved it. Working in a bead store when you don't own a bead store is so much fun. But then, as I was looking to have a career change, I found Beadalon, which is local in Westchester, Pennsylvania, and I was able to meet a bunch of people who worked in the company, and between my skill set and what they wanted me to do for them, it was a match made in heaven 17 years ago, and I haven't stopped since.
That's awesome. Thank you, Meredith. Pass it over to the one, the only Rita Panula. I did get it right there. Rita, where did it all begin?
So, my mother was a seamstress and a dressmaker. She worked for Olle Cassini in Italy before she came to the U.S. So I learned to do intricate beadwork on wedding gowns at the age of 7. And then I would do some beadwork and shove bugle beads in my pocket and just skim from all of my mother's gorgeous shanks of seed beads, bugle beads, I mean anything Swarovski crystal, little crustaceans, and that's where it started.
So it's a family business.
So I guess,
yeah.
You know, I get my talents, and like Meredith, like I always grew up doing some kind of craft. Like, you know, I was in a house of 4 girls, so whether it was Christmas ornaments or, you know, dioramas, anything, we were always very hands-on.
So you grew up in it. How did it become a career?
So I started at a bead store at 13, where I begged this amazing person. Her name is Darlene Danzig. She opened up the Bead Gallery in Rockville Center on Long Island. And I begged and begged and begged her to hire me, that I would work for free. I would bead hair if she needed. I was just a nuisance to this poor woman. And then she finally said, all right, let's try it out. And that's it. I had a hammer put in my hand, and I've been working with metal ever since.
So your focus is on metal?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your answers. Now we're going to come back this way, and imagine, if you will, you're getting ready to come to Bead Fest 2023, right? And you can bring one tool that best represents and is most useful in what you do. What would it be? You're on the air.
So, I know, Susan, we had this conversation last time, so I know it's really odd, but at Impress Art, we have an amazing screw hole punch that JTV carries. It is fantastic. It cuts through the thickest gauges of metal without puckering. This is my #1 tool, and I keep it in my makeup case. Because everyone always takes them on me. So now I always have it. I have it handy, and I travel with it in my makeup case.
Awesome. Meredith, you're up.
So I'm going to say 2 things.
Okay.
So I'm cheating.
Yes.
The 2 things that I would come to Bead Fest with and make sure that I did not leave at home were crimping pliers, to make to finish off jewelry with crimp beads, and also our best blue-handled Italian flush cutters. Those are my two favorite
61?
tools. Plier 61.
Okay,
is that
gotcha,
what it is? Yep.
gotcha.
I didn't want to speak in error, but it's Plier 61, the Italian blue-handled cutters and the crimping pliers. Those are my two cannot live without tools.
Thank you. And I believe somebody's thunder was just stolen. So, Susan, what are you going to do?
I don't know about this. All right, I'm going to cheat too, because I'm going to say that I would bring what I like to call the trifecta, which is actually a set of 3 pliers, and it does come in cases together sometimes. A round nose plier to make my loops, a chain nose plier, because you can do almost anything with a chain nose plier, and Plier 61, which is a cutter, which is an amazing flush cutter that cuts everything. I mean, but I would never in a million years go to anywhere without those 3 tools in my purse pocket somewhere, because you literally can do almost anything with those. You might even be able to stab a hole in something, not metal. I mean, so that maybe the next thing is the hole punch, but I'm just gonna say that definitely those 3. But if I could only have one, I would take the chain nose, because you can actually cut things and make. You can do a lot of things. You can crimp. You can do some amazing stuff with the chain nose plier. I mean, it's good stuff.
Okay. Now then, Sandy. It's a different medium, but Sandy told me about a term before we came up here, a multi-crafter. You basically do it all, right?
Well, aren't most of us multi-crafters? How many of you here not only do sewing or knitting or beading or quilting
Yes.
or painting or all of the above, right? So multi-crafting is the name of the game, and that's why Interweave is bringing all the crafts under one roof.
Yes.
But the one thing that I would not leave home without is actually a set of circular interchangeable knitting needles, because then no matter what yarn I fall in love with, I've got the right size needle and I'm ready to cast on and go.
Good answer. Okay, next up. So we know how everybody got in the business. We know your favorite tool. If you were going to give one piece of advice to someone who had just started out, what would it be, as far as how can I get better, that sort of thing? What do I look for? Who are my sources, etc.?
The one piece of advice I would give to someone who's just starting out is to allow yourself to be a beginner. I think as adults, we all become very used to being competent, and we get impatient with ourselves when something is hard or it doesn't turn out right the first time. So allow yourself to be a beginner. Allow it to be uncomfortable. Allow it to feel awkward. And from there, you can figure out with a little bit of practice how to actually get good and get to the point of competence. But be patient with yourself.
Wow, good answer. Miss Susan?
That's a good one. That's a good one. I'm going to say, no, it's okay. I was going to say, that's good, but I'm going to say don't compare yourself to everybody else. Appreciate yourself for where you are, whether it's a beginner or you're super advanced or actually whatever you do. Don't compare yourself to other people. What you do is amazing. So do it, be brave about it, be excited about it, shout about it. I mean, yeah, absolutely.
From the mountaintop. Meredith.
Those were 2 amazing answers. And I feel like each of us is building on what has been said before, because I couldn't agree more with both of those statements. But my advice is to have fun, because jewelry making, crafting, yarn craft, sewing, all of these things are supposed to be fun. They're supposed to bring you joy. And if you get caught up in the minutia, and if you get caught up in comparing yourself to others, you're not having fun anymore. And when I stop having fun with a technique, I'll try something else.
Yeah.
And open my mind up to a whole new avenue of crafting, of making. So that is my advice, is to just remember that this is supposed to be fun.
Rita?
So we all know that imposter syndrome is a real thing, but it only sticks around for a little bit, right? Don't get discouraged. Just keep on going, work through it, and take your time with it. Everything comes with a season. If you're stuck on something, walk away. Pick up something else, pick up another craft, come back to it. A set of fresh eyes is the best thing that you could have.
Awesome. Hold the mic. Okay. So we know where we all started. We know our tool. We've given some advice. Think back in your making history. For two of you, it's basically your entire life. For the other two, it's into adulthood, right? I want to hear your one favorite thing you have ever made. And if you have pictures, please get it out. One favorite thing.
So, I believe when I first started with Impress Art, it was the first mandala pattern that I created. I think the best thing about my job is, I turn drawings into metal stamps, and then I get to use those in pieces that I create. I actually have the necklace here. It's one of the first things I made 8 years ago, and mandala patterns are just like going on a walkabout. You're going around and around and around, and every experience, every turn that I take with the metal and manipulating it and turning is just kind of like turning the page on different things in life. So it's here if anybody wants to see it. But yeah.
Cool.
So.
Meredith, your favorite item ever?
I think answering that question is much like answering the question, do you have a favorite child? Because all of the things that I've created over the years have been my favorite at a specific moment. And so my favorite thing that I've ever created is probably what I made last. And it's true though, I mean, we're makers and we love making, and it comes through our fingers, and it itches to get out, and it itches to get made and to be put out into the world. And so it's impossible for me to answer that question. There's so many things over the years, from cowls that I have crocheted to purses that I've sewn, to pieces of jewelry that have been completely intricately stitched to a really simple stretch bracelet. So it depends on where I am in my creative journey at that particular time as to what my favorite thing is.
Okay, all right. Broad answer, but good.
I literally don't want to go after you anymore. I was going to say the last thing I made, but I guess I'll just have to go back to the very first piece of jewelry I ever made. And I'm going to tell you guys right now, it was nothing special, okay? It was pretty awful. But I found out that first day that I made jewelry that you could that people put holes in gemstones. Okay, I didn't know this, but that people put holes in sapphires, which is my favorite gemstone. It's my birthstone. And I found out that you could take a piece of wire, thread it through the hole in the sapphire, attach it to a piece of chain, and wear it as a piece of jewelry. Really?
Really?
Wow. And so that's what I made, and that's what I wore, and that is probably, because it was life-changing, my favorite piece of jewelry.
Cool. I like it. What you got?
Mine is a far more sentimental answer, which is odd because I am the least sentimental person in the entire world. But shortly after I opened my yarn store, I made my father a sweater. It was a big, chunky Shetland wool cardigan, and I gave it to him for Christmas that year. Now, we were in California, and I didn't actually see my parents all that often, so I'd never seen my father wear the sweater. Well, 2 years later, he died after having fought cancer for 5 years. And my mother gave the sweater back to me, and she said, your dad wore this every time for chemo because it kept him warm in those cold rooms. And it is one of my most precious things.
We're going to take a quick break. Goodness gracious.
I know.
Okay. You just kind of answered the next question.
Okay.
In life you have many responsibilities, spouses, kids. Sammy has her cute as a button little girl with her here. I don't know where she is, but she's around here. And then you have regular life to live. What keeps you motivated? Other than a paycheck or something like that, but what keeps you motivated? What passion is it that makes you want to get up in the morning and say, well, I know the sweater or the piece of jewelry that you all make? What is that burning thing in your gut/heart that keeps you doing it every single day?
I like being useful.
Okay.
I am endlessly patient and endlessly productive if I have yarn in my hands. I don't understand people who can sit and watch TV for 3 hours and do nothing. I don't know how you do that. I would be fidgeting.
Let me explain. You take your feet. You like to be useful, you like to be busy.
Yes, I
Okay.
like being productive.
All right, good answer. Susan?
The thing that keeps me motivated is teaching. I enjoy teaching. I love sharing what I've learned. I love seeing that aha moment on other people's faces. It just, to me, sharing my passion with you or you or you and seeing you learn something, change, find a new passion is really what keeps me motivated and keeps me excited.
Cool.
Well, see, now you took my answer, Susan, so there we go. But in all seriousness, it's in my soul. I can't not make things. There's one of the questions that we'll might get to in the future is, where does your inspiration come from? I come to a bead show like this and I see something and I immediately need to make it. And I can't think about anything else until it gets out of my fingers in some way or another. It might not be exactly what I've seen before, or I'll see something that I want to sew, or something that I want to crochet, or even something that I want to learn a new skill for that I haven't done before. That's what keeps me going, is that constant need to feed my need to learn something new, and then to be able to share that, as you were saying, Susan, with somebody else, and keep it going so that more people can feel that kind of passion and that kind of excitement that I get when I've made something and I've brought it out into the world.
Taking all my questions.
Everyone took my answer. Yeah. So I would say first and foremost would be teaching. I enjoy it immensely. The other aspect of it would be just sharing, the sharing that goes into it. And I'm not a person to sit still even if I am sick. I work through everything, and then I also constantly have my dad in the back of my head saying, at the end of the day, could you honestly sit there and say you did a good job?
Yeah.
So that's really kind of drilled into me since I was very young. And that's basically it. So.
While we're sitting here, you ladies have gotten into obviously way up in your profession, your art, etc., which is why you're on the panel. And if you wanted to say to someone who's just starting out, where do you look for help, for inspiration? Like you're sitting there at your craft table or whatever it may be, and you're like, okay, you got writer's block, crafting block, or something like that. Where can we go? Who can we talk to really get it going again?
I talk to all my creative friends. They're all a text message or a phone call away. I do a lot of just observing, basically. Nature, different textiles, patterns, trends, I just constantly scrolling and constantly have my mind going, so.
And hold that right there. If you could do one other medium, what would it be?
That's a hard one.
That's why I'm here. I'm asking the tough questions today.
Okay, so when I went to school, I minored in medical illustration, and I worked with some cadavers. I've always wanted to get published in a medical journal, and that's never happened. So if anyone knows anyone
With a cadaver that needs
with a
drawing.
cadaver that needs to be drawn,
Tony, you got a
you
cadaver?
know who to. There you go. You know who to contact.
Okay.
So that's it.
That's awesome. Meredith, where do we go for inspiration, and what else would you like to try?
Okay, so one of the things that I love about being a part of this creative community is the people and the companies who work within it are so generous with giving their knowledge, with teaching people how to do a new technique, how to maybe think about doing something that you've done for years in a different way. All of the Facebook Lives and all of the jewel schools and all of the programs and social media outlets are where I would recommend going for inspiration. I love watching Rita's Facebook Live. I'm always just blown away by how easy she makes stamping look. It's one of my most challenging, we've talked about this before, for me it's one of those things that's very challenging, and I love watching you do it because I will immediately go downstairs, take my stamps out, and start practicing. And then that will inevitably lead to something else, to something else, to something else. So I would recommend taking advantage of the amazing resources that are available within this creative community to just start watching, to be a part of the community. Because in the Facebook Lives that we do, and in the Jewel School program also, everyone's helping each other out. Mm-hmm. And everyone in the chats are giving tips and tricks and suggestions and what ifs. And that's what I love doing when I do the Beadle on Facebook Lives, is thinking someone will just type in, well, like, try this. And I'll say, all right, well, let's just try it. Let's see if it works. It might work. It might not work. But we're going to have a lot of fun while it is working, or while we're finding out if it's working. And what was the second question, Robert?
Medium.
Oh, yes, the other medium that you would like to try.
The other medium that I would like to try.
Yes.
So one of the things that I have always been a little hesitant about, I've delved in a couple of times, but I really want to work with fire more. I want to do soldering. I want to get the flame out. I want to start putting things together and make take my jewelry making to the next level. And it's always been something that I've been very hesitant of, and I know, and Susan is here saying, do it, do it, do it.
Yes.
Kate Richburg is another one who's like, Meredith, just take the flame out and just start doing it. And that's the answer, though. That's the one thing that I still haven't quite conquered yet.
Susan?
Okay, so inspiration.
Where do you go for
Where do I go for inspiration?
No,
or
where would you
other
tell
people
someone to go?
You know, I personally think that the Jewel School YouTube channel is unbelievable. And it's not just me. There are so many artists on there. There's, Katie, Alicia, Laura. We have guest artists. I think, Rita, have you done one? Meredith has. I mean, there is so much education there. It is crazy. It is free. I mean, it's awesome. So that's where I would send you for that. And plus, you should also watch me and Robert on Jewel School, because we bring all these people in as well. And Robert is amazing at tying stretch cord. So there's that. Hey, you know what? Do what you know. I mean, you might as well, right? But the other thing was, what other medium?
Yes.
So this is kind of funny. So, because I was thinking about this the other day. It's not really a medium, but I was at a crossroads in my life, and I was working as an expert witness, again. And I had a choice to make, because I was hating it, right? So I'm either going to get my PhD. I already have my master's degree, which would mean I do the same thing, right? Expert testimony. Or I was going to get my real estate license, or I was going to become a lawyer. Well, I've got my real estate license. I don't want my PhD. And then Jewel School called. So I went on, and so the only thing I haven't done on my list is a lawyer.
Uh-oh.
And I do still have a burning desire to become a lawyer.
Well, you do like to talk, so,
I do.
you know.
I do.
Yeah.
And I actually was helping somebody the other day do some stuff that would have technically required a lawyer, and I'm like, if only. But can you imagine?
If only.
Can you imagine if I became a lawyer too? That would be weird, wouldn't it?
You'd be dangerous.
I think I would be.
Yes, she would be. All right, Miss Sandy, I know you do multi.
Yes.
So where would you say go if you are in your own medium and you need help, you need inspiration? Where do you tell people to go?
One of my favorite quotations comes from an artist by the name of Chuck Close, who passed away a couple of years ago, but you may know of him. And the quotation is that inspiration is for amateurs. Professionals just show up and get to work.
Wow.
And what that means to me is that really the muse finds you when you're working, and you find inspiration from the materials and the way they feel in your hand, and you take a handful of beads and you throw it on the table and see what sort of formations they make and let that inspire you. The other thing I would say, and of course this is because my boss is sitting right there in the front row, is that if you need inspiration or help, Golden Peak Media has bunches of channels. You can go to Interweave to look at the bead and jewelry newsletters. Sign up for those newsletters and get that hit of inspiration in your mailbox every week. Sign up for the knitting or crochet newsletters. There is Sewing Daily and Sew News Magazine. There is the Artists Network and their newsletters. So whatever floats your boat in the creative area, you can find that inspiration and that support with one of the Golden Peak Media channels. You're welcome.
You're welcome. Yes, 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 yes. And they're free. I've just been informed.
Is that your favorite word?
It is. And what was the other question that I asked? Because
what other media?
Yes.
I would love to be able to paint. I have very minimal skill when it comes to drawing and painting, and I would love to be able to produce a piece of art on canvas as opposed to the 3D art I make now.
Awesome. I bet you would be an incredible artist being a multi-crafter. And I am going to use that over and over and over again. Okay, thank you.
I'm going to put TM at the end of it just for you.
We have a number of people that we thank for putting this whole conference on, whatever you would like to call it, from, of course, Interweave for putting it together, for all of these beautiful booths here. Ladies, is there, and this is one answer, Meredith, who is the one person that you would thank or say, this person had a lot to do with where I am right now? I know it's a tough question, that's why I'm here. Jamie said, I want you to be tough today.
Just one answer?
Just one answer, one person that you would say, that person really, really turned the page for me and brought me where I am. Okay?
Okay.
And you can say, now there are others, but the one person I'd like to thank today. You're on.
The one person I would thank is a knitting designer by the name of Deborah Newton, who I've actually met, but I met her only recently. And the reason I credit her is because she published a book back in 1989 called Designing Knitwear. That was really a foundational text for me. I'm somebody who learns from books, and that book taught me how to do what I do.
Awesome. I know, it's a tough one, Susan.
It's really not fair to say one person. A what? Well, I mean, there's two that I would say, but I'm just going to go ahead and go with my dad. And because if it hadn't been for my dad, I wouldn't have recognized the opportunity when it hit me in the face. So when I was little, my dad took me gem mining all the time. I was obsessed with digging through the dirt and mining for sapphires. It was like the best thing ever. I remember one time we were mining and it was pouring rain. My sisters left, went to go sit in the car, and I stayed at the mine because there were still buckets of dirt to go through, and I needed to go through all of them and make sure that there wasn't a sapphire in at least one of them before I left. Dad brought a towel and put it over my head and did the parental run back and forth to the car to make sure they were okay and I was okay. But that's what inspired my love of gemstones, and it's what it was pivotal in me starting to make jewelry, period. I would never have done it.
Right?
Daddy. Yeah. Thanks, Dad.
Yeah. Meredith?
Did you find a sapphire that day?
I don't remember. It's about the hunt. It's about the hunt.
It is about the hunt.
Yes.
It's like coming to a beach show. It's all about the hunt.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, my grandma is the one person who I would really credit with where all my creativity and my love of crafting has come from. Grandma Lil. She was an amazing, amazing woman, and I remember so vividly so many times over the years sitting with her and making things. She loved to press flowers and put flowers into different arrangements. She taught me how to knit and to crochet. I had to relearn, of course, many, many years later, but I do remember knitting and crocheting with Grandma Lil. We painted we always had some sort of a crafty project going on, and I think that that's so important and something that I try to pass on as much as I can, as much as she taught me and inspired me. I think that's really where a lot of where I love teaching and passing along everything that I've learned, where that came from as well. So,
Cool.
Grandma Lil.
Mm-hmm.
This is a long one. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. So there have been many people in my life who have stood, or kind of cleared the way for where I am right now. But metal stamping, 2005. Unfortunately, I was widowed at 30 with a 1-year-old. And I was kind of left holding the bag. I had a mortgage to pay. I had to do things. I was a mom. I was a stay-at-home mom at that point. And I'm like, I have to get back to my roots. And there's a very nice man in the industry that kind of took me under his wing and sent me home with a horrendous box of stamps. And then a couple of days later, after I just stared into this box of raw copper and brass and some sterling and a 2-pound hammer and a horrible set of letter stamps, I had a knock at the door. It was FedEx, and before my husband had passed, he ordered a hand-stamped necklace. And I'm like, oh, that's what I'm gonna do with that letter set. So I became a creative entrepreneur. I was one of the first 3 women to sell metal stamped pieces, personalized pieces on Etsy. And yeah, I would have to thank him. But I'm also a rule breaker. So how I got offered my job at Impress Arts, and there is the man right there, Adam Walter. I was a customer of his for a long time, and I always enjoyed our conversations. When I would go in, he would come out, make me hold a hammer. And one day, Adam and his brother Jeff made me an offer to travel and become part of their team. So that's what I've been doing. So yes, so it's one person, but it's really 3 people. So,
Okay.
rule breaker.
Well,
So.
yes. I just have to say to all of you who are makers, some of us don't have those skills. I am so impressed by you guys, where you get your inspiration, the speed at which I sit there and watch Susan go like that, and she'll tell me to do something, and I'll be like, okay. Thank you all, number one, for joining us up here. Thank you all for joining us here. And if you have any questions whatsoever, anybody have anything? Tony got something? Okay. You've already asked a big one in the past month. So thank you so much for joining us. Now, coming up here in just a little while, live on this stage, it's an award ceremony. It will not be me talking, which is a good thing. But please come back, because we want to honor, I think it's 5 very special people right here on this stage. Those of you watching at home, come back with us a little while later, okay? Have a great day at Bead Fest 2023.